All right. Welcome to the last Be the Market Expert of 2025. And so, guys, as we do this, this is kind of an interesting article that I pulled up from Inman. And it was just like, let's take a look back at our top five real estate stories of this year. And so I think what's interesting is we go through what we're kind of looking at, right? Because here's the deal. The whole reason for this call that we're on is really just to be able to have conversation starters and have jumping off points from when we're in conversations with our buyers, sellers, the consumers, right? Like that's the only reason why. This is not to help us out, go out and get more real estate deals. Well, it is, but I mean, it's not help to like convert. It's help just to have the conversations and to be that real estate economist of choice. And so this is our industry, right? Like we are all independent contractors. We are going through and we are having conversations with people. And so they expect us to be the expert, right? We all got our 168 hours worth of schooling and rock and roll. And yet now what are we doing? Well, we need to be educated and just have conversations. We don't know what our consumers are going to see. They're going to see something on CNN, they're going to see it on Fox, they're going to see it on Twitter, YouTube, insert whatever here. And so this whole year, what we have done is we have just gone through and we have talked about what's going on in the market, the real estate trends, and let's just go look and just see what like our, I guess, peers in the industry space have really looked at, right? Because this is Inman. This is a real estate publication. So let's look at the top stories. The first story, right, where we go through, it says Compass negotiations to buy Berkshire Hathaway. All right. So that was the fifth most popular story of 2025. And it's funny just because I think that, I've had conversations about Compass multiple times, especially if you were on Coffee Talk the other day, is that they're doing some things to disrupt some people. And one of the things was they were talking about this Berkshire Hathaway purchase. And here's the thing: it says this is all a rumor. This wasn't even real. Like this just got let out. Berkshire Hathaway has come out emphatically and said this is not true. We are not in conversations with these guys. We don't know what anyone is talking about. And then it goes through and it says, but the one that actually did get a lot of hype around it was Compass Acquire Anywhere. And yes, absolutely. Right. When we go through and we just talk about these M&As, right? Mergers and acquisitions, of course it's going to bring big news when you say, okay, cool. Like all these other guys that look like they're operating under different brokerage houses, right? ERA, Better Homes and Gardens, Coldwell Banker. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put them all under one DBA and fly the banner. Yeah, that's going to get a lot of news, especially with people in the industry. So that's the first one. All right. The second one, the second biggest news article in order from five, four, three, two, one to the largest, I guess this is the fourth biggest, is Zillow to prohibit listings that are privately marked starting in May. All right, cool. So in May, we got, when we're going through and we were look at this was May of this year, 2025. And so what has Zillow done? And you guys have probably felt this a little bit. And this one's important, especially going into the future to be able to have the conversations with your consumers because we do understand this. Our sellers and our buyers are going to Zillow. And if you're like, is my seller really going to Zillow? Yes. The answer is absolutely yes, right? Zillow is the authority in the most consumers' eyes that this is where I go to get my real estate data with what my neighbor's house is going to sell for, what my house is going to sell for, my Zestimate, right? And so when we go through, what do sellers do? Well, they go in and they want to go look and make sure that their listing is on Zillow and how many eyes and how many saves and how many shares and all that information. And so what has Zillow done? Zillow has gone through, right, in their war with Compass, because Compass is just making waves this year, is they've gone through and they said, well, Compass has said, well, hey, we want private listings. We want to keep everything in our silo. And if we want to play in the sandbox with Zillow, we want to play with the sandbox with Zillow. And Zillow said, cool, do whatever you want. But we are the largest platform with eyes for the consumer to go look at properties. And guess what? If you try to keep data from us, we will just simply not put your listings on the MLS. Also, what does it do? It's crawling. This isn't a person. This is AI crawling the web spaces and it's going through and your house pops up on the MLS. And then what does the AI do? Well, it says, well, was it anywhere before it was on the MLS? And it says, well, yes, it was. And so Zillow says, awesome, we're not going to publish this listing on our MLS. And some of your guys' listings are going to be caught in the collateral damage. And we just need to be able to have a conversation, be like, listen, hey, um, Zillow is a third party. Zillow is not the MLS. Zillow is another company that is syndicating out properties on for consumers for a fee, and this is how they make money. And we need to be able to have the conversation that says, hey, another real estate company went out there and told Zillow they weren't going to publish to their publications anymore. And Zillow said that's okay with us. And so now we're just getting caught up in collateral damage and just be able to go through and just be able to talk some of these consumers off the ledge, because I can guarantee you guys are going to get more and more phone calls or text messages or however you communicate from your client around this specifically. And if it hasn't happened to you, I promise you it will. Like your consumers are looking, they're looking to see if you are on this platform. The next biggest story was real estate lawyers take big stand against agents commission sharing. All right, cool. We know this, right? We know that we got rid of the blanket offer compensation off the MLS. We no longer tell the co-op, the buy side, what the seller is willing to pay if someone brings a buyer to their listing. And this is nationwide. This isn't just Colorado. I want everyone to understand this was a nationwide antitrust lawsuit that made the lawyers a lot of money. It didn't make the consumers a lot of money because there's been sellers, there's been buyers, there's been seller and buyer lawsuits. There's so many copycat lawsuits at this point because everyone's pointing the finger and calling this junk fees, right? It was the war on junk fees a couple of years ago. We got labeled as one of those. Realtors are junk fees. And so if we look at this, guys, and we're going through, we're having these conversations, this is also very, very important. Yes, this is top of mind. Not only are your peers looking at this, but I don't know if you guys have seen this. Like there are still like postcards going out. There are still things that are happening. Mail is going through your inboxes that's talking about, have you sold your home? You might be entitled to compensation. And so here's the deal. You guys are a part of the largest real estate brokerage in the world, Keller Williams. Gary Keller wrote a check for all of your past misdealings when it comes to talking about compensation. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, don't worry about paying me. I'm free. The seller's going to pay me. That language is simply not okay. And so we need to go through and we need to have conversations. And so what I want to make sure that we emphasize is while this is the third largest story on Zillow or on Inman right now, this is going to be ongoing, guys. And if you go through, what they've also done is they've been sending out watchdogs to go out and have conversations and to call agents and to see what their scripts look like and to see if the industry is changing. And the lawsuit that was settled does not cover any misdealings after the settlement was paid out. And so we trip over and we just tell a buyer that we're free, or we tell a seller that they have to pay a buyer's compensation. Guys, this is going to open you up for litigation, and your E&O insurance is not going to cover it because this would be breaking the law. All right. This isn't just a screw up. This isn't a slip. This would be us breaking the law. All right. So there's your third. Well, the second biggest one was Keller Williams takes on major investment from CoreLogic owner. All right, cool. So CoreLogic, and we go through and like we play with a lot of things with CoreLogic, right? Like as we're looking in CoreLogic, right? That's your MLS, right? That's when you guys go through and you guys get into their CoreLogic is what powers a lot of that stuff. Well, we got into a partnership agreement with these guys, and what happened was a big piece of this was Mo Anderson was divesting, settling her estate, her affairs, and everything, getting ready, and got the green light. And this is who Gary Keller vetted and decided to partner with. And here's the deal: it's almost, I think it's been a year, maybe a little bit longer, and nothing has changed, which has been pretty cool. But yet, what they're doing is they're looking to see how can they deploy some of this capital to make sure that you guys have an even better advantage compared to the general public of real estate brokerages. So we haven't seen this thing truly unfold yet, but just know that there's private equity money that is inside of your brokerage house right now. And the owners used to be Gary Keller, John Davis, or no, I'm sorry, not John Davis, Gary Keller, Joe Williams, I apologize, Joe Williams, and then Mo Anderson. That's where you get the Williams from. And so right now it's Joe, Gary, and then this capital firm is the one that also has this. We've never been public. There was threats of us going public a little while ago, but nothing ever happened from that. Okay, cool. So there's that. And then the largest one that happened is NAR overturns the no commingling rule in executive committee vote. And so what does this look like? And so this look like if you were to take your private listings and your MLS listings and put them onto one website, NAR was coming down and raining some issues on top of you. And so what now you can do is you can have your own private website or whatever website that you use and have your MLS data as well as your non-MLS homes on the same tab. And that's literally what this was. There was a rule that said, hey, we understand that all the listings come from you anyways. But if you have a listing on the MLS, you cannot put the same listing that you have off market on the same tab of the website. Literally, that's what this rule was. And now this rule has been overturned that says if you have a private listing or you have a listing that is on the MLS, they can both be on the same tab of a website. That is the largest share of eyes that Inman has gotten on a publication this year. And so, guys, we say all that to say this, like nothing really crazy has happened in this market because, again, we have an affordability issue. And so we didn't see a lot of movement. All we just saw was a lot of rule changes and a lot of animosity towards a lot of other brokerages and different third-party aggregators. Like that is really the story of 2025. And so guess what? Tomorrow's New Year's Eve. We get to forget about it. We get to move forward and then let's jump into it. So here's something kind of cool. It says the US housing market in 2025, a year of normalization. All right, cool. This is what we saw. We saw activity rise from 16.4% to almost 40% nationwide. Guys, that's big, right? Like that's huge. When we look at this thing and we're going through and what we're seeing is more people put their home on the market. We're seeing people realize that the silver tsunami, the Airbnb bust, the housing crash, the whatever is not happening, which we all get on this call. And so when we go through, it says rising inventory reshaped 2025 markets, where prices held, where momentum slowed, and what the shift towards balance means for buyers and sellers in 2026. All right, cool. So they're prefacing this thing, and that's the AI summary. So if we go through and it says after the housing market cycles define the extreme shortages, rapid price appreciation, and buyer competition. This year delivered something close to balance. And guys, we felt that, right? We saw homes in our areas where we had multiple offer situations and we had homes that have sat on the market for months. Guess what? There's no necessarily any rhyme or reason to how this is happening, but what we are seeing is life. Buyers getting married, having babies, getting job promotions in other states, getting job promotions or, being deployed or unfortunately losing their jobs, someone dying, divorce, right? Motivation, stuff happens. And so buyers are coming online. And guess what? People need shelter, right? So you have two options. You can rent or you can own. And that's it. Right. And so when we're going through and we're talking about this is the conversation. We need to go through and have as many relationships as we possibly can because we do not know what is happening in someone's world unless we have a conversation with them. And we need to be in emotional proximity to them. So when they are thinking about transacting business, because life happened, that they're thinking about us. And so let's look at this thing. So this is national snapshot balanced with a slight seller edge. So this is what this thing's doing. All right. So our median list price, 419. Not in here in Colorado, but for the nation, 419. Price per square foot, 209. Okay, so median price is up slightly. Price per square foot down slightly. Days on market up 10%, 84 days. That's a talking point, guys. I think if we look through this, we're having conversations with people that are thinking about selling real estate. We can go through and we say, yeah, you know what? Nationally speaking, 84 days on market is kind of where we are right now as a nation. And we are seeing pockets of Colorado anywhere from, 30 to 90 days on market as well. And it really just depends on presentation and price of the home. Right? And that's the conversation. The market action index. All right, cool. 33.4%. All right. So what this is saying is, listen, there's still a seller's edge in the market. We're not in a buyer's market. We're not in a balanced market. Sellers still are winning. And here's the deal. This is why they're winning, because there's so much equity in their home, everyone, that there's no reason for them to sell at a loss. Now, I get it. We looked at this on Coffee Talk the other day, and there's some people that are underwater. And yet Gary Keller tells us this: you don't lose money on your home unless you have to sell. And if that's a dumb moment for you, like that's very, very true. If you hold on to a property, historically speaking, it appreciates 4% year over year. And yes, there's some markets where we're at 1%. There's some times where we're slightly down. And then there's times where we look back and we're like, oh my God, did we really just appreciate 10% this year? Now, no crystal ball, but yet we're still in a seller's market. Active inventory, 16.4% more inventory year over year. Cool. Months of inventory, 3 months, guys. And this is kind of the standard that they base sellers market versus buyers market off of. They're saying less than 3 months of inventory, we're in a seller's market. And then price reduction, guys, we've been talking about this 40%. 40% of all homes take a price decrease. And so here's another conversation that I'm having, probably with my buyers and maybe sellers, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. When we go through this and we look, most homes, 40% of all homes nationwide are taking a price cut right now. So while this home might be slightly out of your budget, it might be worth us going to take a look and write in an offer and seeing if we have a motivated seller, right? And just get into conversations with people. Also, if I'm talking to my sellers, I'm going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what we understand is that there's only two different ways that we can get more eyes on a home, right? We can either make sure that we're either priced right, or we can do improvements to the property by adding money to it to bring it up to a value that you believe that it is. Which would you like to do? Would you like to put more money into this house to bring it up to value? Or would you like to price this home? Because we're seeing 40% of all homes take a price decrease because we're actually pricing homes too expensively. And now they're just sitting on the market. And then we get to frame some of these conversations. So we look through here and it says, awesome. So new listings, we had 3.19 million homes hit the market. Total sales, 4.3, right? Absorbed, right? And so active inventory, we got about 773,000. Let's call it 774 is what the average inventory looks like. But let's look at this. Here's this market action index. And so what they're doing right here is they give us these scores, right? So you can see the 70.9, 70.2. And what this is saying is, hey, is this a seller's market or a buyer's market? Well, it says top metros, so we know this is seller's market. So we look through here, right? So 70, so you can see here, Greenville, North Carolina, 77 days on market, $339,000. New Hampshire, right? We got Pennsylvania, we have New York, we have California. So we're looking at this thing, we can kind of see that it kind of like goes back and forth, like it changes a little bit as far as price point goes. Let's look at top states, right? So if we look at this, we got this. We have Rhode Island's killing it, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Michigan. Also, no surprise for anyone on this call. What we have seen is we have seen people moving from the Sun Belt, right? Sun Belt was crushing it, right? Digital nomads because of 2021. And everyone's like, cool, I can go move into a cheaper part of the country right now and still collect my six-figure income and go do remote work and be on the beach. Sign me up. Well, then we start seeing it switch to where we start seeing people go to the northeastern part of the United States. And so this is what we saw. Who knows what it's going to look like next year? It could change again, but it's constantly moving and it typically is around price point. And we look at this, and most of these are slightly higher than the median price point of the United States, but still, most of them are still significantly lower than what our price point is here in Colorado, where the money moved. All right. So if we look at here, these are where we're seeing real estate going through. We got Florida still, California, Long Island, Texas. Also, no surprise, right? What do we know? We know that Texas, we know that California, we know that Florida are some of the largest land masses that we have for population. So this number should not surprise anyone. It's not that these are hot destinations. It's just that that's where a lot of people live, right? These are huge land masses, right? No one's living in Wyoming. So we go through, it says the highest price points. Cool. It's the coastal states, which we already know: California, Hawaii, California, all the way across the board, right? And we're seeing this 2.7 million, 1.7, 1.4, 1.4, 1.4 median. All right. So we're looking at this fastest markets where things are moving. So this is what's interesting. When we're talking about 80 days on market, these are the fastest markets right now, 35 days. And things have been turned on their head. And so these are some of the conversations that you could have if your pocket, right? If you want to go deep in your pocket, you could really be like, yeah, you know what? One of the fastest markets that we have right now is Springfield, Missouri in the United States, where their median days is 35 days on market, right? Where everyone else is about 6 weeks, they're at 35 days. So here's what we're going to do. What we're going to see when we're going through, and here's how to use some of this data if you guys wanted to. Inventory's up, perfect, right? And I would say the days on market, price adjustments, like these are the conversations that we can have. And obviously, this I can tell you as a new agent, I would look at national listing. I'd say like national data does not matter. Like that was my purview when I got into real estate. I'm like, why are we talking about national data? Like, who cares about national data? Well, that's what sets the pulse, right? We can talk about national data. We don't know where our sellers are going to be moving to, but we can say, like, compared to the nation, the whole nation is experiencing this right now. And that's what gives us when we start talking about Airbnb bust, housing crash, insert whatever here, national data is what's going to kick this thing off. Then we can get local about it. But all we're having is these little touch points and data points that are helping our consumers make the decision that's best for them. Well, then let's go through and let's look at this. Logan Motoshami, this is Friday. He says, why didn't double-digit growth in purchase apps lead to more sales in 2025? Well, we already know this answer as well. There's also people refinancing. All right. So a lot of this, there's going to be refinancing. There's going to be people that when we look at this, 6% is cheaper than what they bought for. And so them refinancing down to 6%, some of you are like, oh my God. And yes, it's very real. What we're also seeing is this: they're just finding out what they qualify for in hopes that the spring market's going to bring more inventory and more opportunity for them because we're all programmed that we're in a seasonal industry. And so, guys, I want you all to understand this. Like, even if you felt like you slept on your consumers, the buyers and the sellers that are being pre-qualified, there's still an opportunity, right? There's still an opportunity that they haven't moved with this yet. But here's your purchase application index. Still super exciting. And again, I know we talk about this every week. I want everyone to know while there's been some negative downward trending week over week data for 2025, what we have to understand is this: look at this separation between 2024 and 2025. This is saying that, hey, historically speaking, we are in a very seasonal month. And yes, we could see that 3 weeks of or 2 weeks of negative trending data, but we are significantly higher than 2024. So what does this tell us? This tells us that, yeah, there's less people than what there were 2 weeks ago or even last week, but yet people are still interested in figuring out what they qualify for. Plus, who knows how many of these people are still online? How many of these people are still with their application that has been approved for $600,000 in the Denver metro area that has not reached out to you, even though they're your Facebook friend or you go to their local church or you're in their bowling league or insert whatever here, that is on the sideline with their approval letter waiting to buy. Guys, this is your opportunity. This is big. And this is one of those conversations where people are going through and they're saying, oh, well, no one's moving. And you're just like, well, hey, honestly, we've gone through and we've had actually 46 straight weeks of positive year over year growth of people finding out from lenders what they qualify for. The golden handcuffs are coming off, everyone. We're not going to talk about the 10-year yield or the treasury or anything like that. But as we go through, this is what we're saying. When we think about housing in 2026, we should focus on week over week data. Yeah. And that's application data, guys. This is, and guess what? We're in the basement, right? Like we've lived in the basement for so long that as we go through and we look at some of this information, it's not huge numbers, but it's positive. And that's what we have to be looking for. It says purchase application data looks out 30 to 90 days. Yeah, guys, we're in 90-day businesses. We know this. And again, like this means that in the next 3 months, all the people that raised their hand last week over the next 3 months are going to be doing some stuff with real estate. And this is a perfect opportunity to start reaching out to people, guys, and just take a massive, massive mind share. All right. Let's look at this. This was interesting as well. So this is Resi Club. Zillow updates its home price forecast across 400 housing markets. And what does this say? It says they slightly upgraded it. All right. And so why are we putting any stock in Zillow? And the reason why we're going to put some stock into Zillow is just because they got a lot of data coming in and they got analysts that are going through and they're crunching some numbers. So it says predicting over the next 12 months, US home prices are likely to rise 2%. Okay, cool. So 2% appreciation year over year. If you were on Coffee Talk the other day, there was another forecast that said 1.4%. All right. So what we've seen is we've seen 1.4, we've seen 2. Historically speaking, we know that 4% is a real number. And so we're anywhere from 1 to 4%. So that's a talking point, right? You're talking to your consumers and you're saying, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I understand that you want to wait, but there's a lot of analysts who believe that we could see 1% appreciation. There's analysts who believe we can see 2%. And historically speaking, we've seen 4% appreciation year over year. So with that being said, if we were to add 4% to this home, would you pay more for it in 6 months than what you would pay for it today? And they say, absolutely not. And they say, well, then I think that if we look at this, does this home make sense to purchase now? And if not, why not? Right? Because here's the deal. We talked about this the other day as well. I think that a lot of times we get into this place where we're like, hey, I'm willing to show my consumers 7, 10, 20, 30 properties. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. It sounds exhausting. It sounds absolutely exhausting, but they've done studies. And this is what the studies are pointing to right now. If you go through and you show your consumer 7 different properties, right? And so just picture a circle, all right, like a clock face with only 7 different numbers, not 12. All right, so you're going through, you got 12 different circles or 12 different faces. And so you go through and each of those 7 counts as one house. And so you show them a house and it wasn't awesome. And the second house that you showed them was actually pretty good. And then the third house you showed them wasn't awesome. The fourth house you showed them was pretty good. And you keep going through, and what they're saying and what you're programming them to is there's always another better house out there. And that's what we're programming our clients when we go out and we show them 7, 10 houses over the weekend. And so what we need to really be doing in 2026, and I would challenge everyone to go through. And when you sit down and do that initial buyer consult, figure out what's important to them. 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, 1,500 square foot up, 1,500 square foot down. They need to have a yard, 2-car garage. And not only that, but figure out why it's important, right? Because they might tell you 3 bedrooms, but they really only need 2 in a study, right? They just need a place to work from home. And so as we're going through and we're doing that, then when they go and they send you the house that's only 2 bedrooms and there is no study, then we can say, well, hey, I know when we originally sat down, you said this. Has something changed? And so do we need to re-go over our strategy for 2026? Because I want to make sure that I put you in homes that make sense for you and your family at your price point so that when that home does come on, that we can get on it as quickly as possible so no one else can steal that home from you. And guys, I would challenge everyone, that's your strategy. Because when we go through and we look at this again, what we're programming our clients, and guys, if you had buyers this year, you probably experienced it. In the top producer mastermind, we talked about this a lot, how our top agents were like, I would much prefer a motivated buyer in this market than a seller, which is crazy, right? Where we're going through and we're like, I'd rather have buyers that are serious than have a seller and just have people bring us offers because bringing the offers has slowed down significantly. But if you have someone that says, you know what, no, I'm buying a house in the next month, that's huge, right? So we're going through and saying over the next 12 months, 2%. All right. So then we're going through and it's doing its information, it's saying whatever. So if we look at this, Zillow's forecast for the metro level home prices between November 2025 and 2026. Remember, everything we do is rear view facing for the most part. So we can't look at December data until we're in January. So we look at this, and they're saying Colorado, you're going to be pretty flat, right? The 0 to 8%, right? We don't see a whole lot of blue until you kind of get into some of the areas that we service, right? But the Denver metro, for the most part, they're going to say, hey, like you're pretty flat, and we're going to see some stuff, go through from there. All right, cool. So they're going in and they're saying number of active homes, you're not going to see a lot of movement. It's going to stay pretty flat, but there's also going to be some things that are going to pop up and actually start moving. And what did we see? Well, they're predicting based off of everything else that we've gone through and we've looked at, they're saying that the northeastern part of the United States is still going to do pretty well. We're going to see more and more homes pop up on the market. Well, then you have to ask yourself why. Why would we see more homes? Are there people that are going to be moving back to different areas? This was an experiment for them. And then they're also saying that, hey, we're actually going to see just really about the same amount kind of moving around um, as we were in Florida, Texas, and California. Okay, cool. So then that goes through and that looks like, hey, it's business as usual in these areas. But then we go in, it says among the 300 largest metro areas, Zillow expects the biggest home price increases. All right, cool. So this is this up here, but just in a number format. New Jersey, Illinois, Tennessee, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, Michigan. Well, it's interesting. It says 2%. Okay, so if you guys are following along, 2% nationwide, but there's going to be pockets that are really going to be leading the way. And so we got 6% all the way down to 4.6%. But a lot of it, again, Tennessee, North Carolina, Arkansas, Connecticut, Michigan, New Hampshire. Okay. Well, then we go through and says, well, what are some of the markets that are going to be pulling that number down? And look at this. Your top six are Louisiana. All right. So your top six right here is Louisiana. And I think that's interesting. And it's interesting for a conversational point, right? Because now we're talking 2% is what they're saying. And yet you got a couple states that are really pulling it down for the rest of us. All right. So then when people are talking about the housing crash and you're talking about, well, hey, they're actually predicting, 1 to 4% appreciation. And we look at this and it's not the same states over and over and over and over again pulling the numbers up, but it's a lot of the same states pulling the numbers down. And then we can go through, we can have this conversation and okay, well, why? Well, Louisiana is interesting, right? Because Louisiana, they have a very, very high crime rate. Also, what do we know? We know that insurance is going up nationwide. We have nationwide premiums and everything else going up. Well, these guys are getting hammered, right? They're going through, and guys, they're getting hammered by weather. And so now you're taking this area that has a higher crime rate. They have very high deductibles and insurance premiums, and they have to go through and get FEMA and all kinds of other stuff on their underwriters. And you take that, now their days on market are going up, and these people, and you look at their price point is not astronomical. So this is the less affluent that are getting hammered by this kind of stuff. And what do? Well, they need to cash out. And so they're dropping prices and they're dropping prices to get the inventory moved so that they can move on because they cannot afford the insurance, right? They don't want to be in the crime that they're associated with right now. So this is also very interesting. Yeah, see Texas. Okay, there's some places in Texas that are go down slightly. California down slightly. All right. And again, what is this? Well, this is where a lot of people were moving, California, Texas, Florida, because digital nomads, and they were just moving to some of these places. And so they're going to go down slightly. And again, this is all over the board once you start getting past Louisiana again. So I think that's an interesting conversation. But here's your year over year change from 24 to 25. And guys, we were just flat, right? We saw that. We lived pretty flat. There was a little bit of downward pressure as far as pricing goes in Colorado. And yet the conversation around there again is you're sitting down with your buyer and they said, well, you know what? We just think that the real estate is going to just bottom out. But then you're asking them, okay, well, what data are you looking at? Where are you getting your information just so that I can look at it as well? We're not saying that they're wrong. We're not saying that they're right. We just want to be on the same page as them. And we can dissect it a little bit after we go through and we can sit down and figure out some information. But then as we're going through, the conversation is this: when do you plan on selling your house? Because we also saw that this year. We saw a big movement in why buyers were also being more pickier with their purchases because they were saying, I'm looking for my forever home. If I'm jumping into a 6% interest rate that doesn't look like it's going down in the foreseeable future to anything significant, that I want to make sure that I'm not having to move again in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. So then we're sitting down with our consumers and we're saying, well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when do you anticipate that you will sell this home? And that's a conversation that we need to be having as well. And again, guys, the whole reason for these conversations is not to force someone to buy, but figure out what their motivations are to help them get to point A to point B. Because guess what? They went out and they got the purchase application. They reached out to you. They're obviously wanting to move. They are scared because the news is getting in their ears, and that's why they're consulting with you. They're real estate economists of choice. This is your job to bring them all this data, to have these conversations, to reach into your pocket and say, oh, I was part of a mastermind the other day. I was part of a conversation the other day where we actually looked at this data and presented to them. But then let's wrap it up with this. This is December 1st to yesterday. And so we're looking at a month's worth of data. And guys, this is interest rates. And we can look right now, it says, as of yesterday, FHA 596, take that all day long, and 6.1 for a conforming loan. Guys, this is good. All right. We're going to see constant movement in this and just downward pressure coming on this. I saw a graph. I should have brought that graph with me, but I actually saw the Fed rate and how it's just been coming down and lower and lower and lower. And yet we understand on this call that when the Fed lowers rates, it does not automatically impact mortgage rates because the Fed loans to banks, and banks are for-profit companies, so are we. And then if the bank were to loan money at the rate that they are getting it or anywhere near that in a quick fashion, what happens is it starts the refinances way faster than they anticipated and they lose money because they have to hold on to that loan product for a certain amount of months or else they have to refund it back to the consumer. And they're not going to do that. And nor should we expect them to. So as we're watching this Fed lower the rates, this is the conversation that we could be having for our consumers. They're like, oh no, I'm waiting for the Fed to lower rates. And you're like, well, if you're waiting for the Fed to lower rates, it might be 3 to 6 months before that even catches up from the last meeting. And so that should be one of the conversations that we're going through and having with our consumers as well. That just because the Fed lowers money that they're loaning to the bank does not necessarily equate to lower mortgages, because if they were to lower the rates, then they have a bunch of refinances and they would have to refund all of the money that they made. And then they would potentially go bankrupt or whatever. And again, that's not what anyone wants. So we're looking at this, but again, the information that we also want to see is it's pretty flat. This is great. We want to see this flat, slightly trending downward. This gives our buyers, this gives our sellers a sense of security that we live in America, in the United States of America, and that the cost of money is pretty predictable. This is good. This is what we've been waiting for. This has been the issue that we had in the later part of 2022 up until about last year, is that it fluctuated so much, it scared people. Sellers didn't know if their home would sell in 6 months and what rates would be that far out. Buyers were trying to time the market for the next valley. They didn't want to be at the peak. Flatness is security for our consumers, for the buyers and sellers. So guys, I'm looking forward to 2026. 2026 is going to be a great market. And I'm not talking about 2021. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that 2021 was great. 2021 was not great. 2021 was frustrating. I mean, you had sellers that were making a lot of money, sure, lots of offers, all the contingencies waived, but yet most sellers become buyers. And so then they were just experiencing it on the back end. And this market, we're going to see more people meet in the middle. We're going to see life taking place and happening, and people are going to be buying and selling real estate. I think that no one is under this notion, since we've been at 7% down to 6% and everywhere in between and a little bit on the outliers, that no one's expecting 3% to come back. I think that that's dead now, which is great. No one thinks that they're going to see 3% again. This is the world that we live in. So now what you're going to see is you're going to see people say, okay, I'm comfortable with it. Then it's our job to prevent the information, the facts about, okay, well, this is how long homes are sitting on the market. This is what's going on for price reductions. These are the concessions that we are seeing in Colorado right now, and give them as much information as they possibly can get to make an informed decision. Because guess what? They talk to a lender. Now they're talking to you. They want to move. It is our job to have that conversation and be the real estate economist of choice in 2026.